Tell me, I'll be calling Mecca.
And I'm Diana Hartman.
And we're the Peace Mix.
Everybody, everybody,
Everybody,
everybody,
everybody needs a living wage. Oh, to get 'em through,
get 'em through,
get 'em through.
get 'em through.
Everybody needs a living wage.
My name is Guadalupe Pineda Cervantes. I am a resident of Lomas del Poleo. My family and I arrived here approximately 12 years ago. In this neighborhood, Lomas del Poleo, which is located in Ciudad Juarez. We arrived here because we were very poor and we could not survive on the salary paid by the maquilas. This neighborhood, we were told, was a neighborhood for poor people, where people would need to come and live, since these were national lands. During those days, there was no electricity or drinkable water. We created our streets with our own hands, without any governmental assistance. Because Lomas del Poleo wasn't even worth a peso. Approximately 2002, people arrived identifying themselves as municipal representatives. And they proposed to us a relocation. Since these lands, they said, were worth anything, they would give us 5,000 pesos each, and we would take with us our makeshift home. When they proposed this to us, I asked them, what is happening here? And they said, these lands are going from being national lands to being private lands. I asked, well, who are these people who are private landowners? And they said they are very wealthy families who can afford to buy these lands from the government. I gathered the 17 families that lived in my area, and we said no to this offer because it was very little money. And when we said no, they told us that we would have to live with the consequences, because through the good or through the bad, we had to leave Lomas. We started noticing what was really happening because a project was proposed called San Jerónimo, Ciudad Juarez, and also the proposed bridge crossings that they wanted to build. This is why they need to displace the residents of Lomas del Poleo. I personally have been threatened. I don't know what to call it, perhaps for being in the forefront, publicly denouncing what is happening to us. And I think my neighbors have had similar threats made against them. January 4th, I came back from Chiapas from being at a Zapatista women's meeting or gathering. And I was very surprised to see that they were demolishing homes and fences. They took trees in their trucks. They had stolen an electrical wire from me. The workers told me that Caterino Rios Camacho had given the orders, that I should ask him for my electrical cable. They said that nothing belonged to me and that I should go help myself. I was on the side of the driver, Fernando Carrillo Flores, and a friend of his got in with him. We call him the Blonde Palmas. And they take off and they pull me along with the tree branches. I stayed in the house and my children told me that they were going to take us to hell and that they were going to take away our home. 2 weeks later, and they followed through with their threats. They demolished my son's home because they allege that this is just a warm-up for going out and publicly denouncing them. And I also want to ask or make a petition that if they want to make their projects or build their projects, that they do it. But it's not fair that they do it at the expense of those of us who barely have enough to live. They respect our human rights as human beings that we are, and those of us who deserve a dignified housing. The authorities and big business people don't care about poor, humble people. Because those of us who are Mexican have a right to a piece of land, so they should respect that. We arrived in Lomas del Poleo in 1981.
Y durante ese tiempo
very happy. Until a man arrived whose name was Pedro Zaragoza.
Que pues nos inquietó, nos empezó a meter en inquietud.
Who caused us distress.
Durante ese tiempo que les acabo de
During that time, we were a happy family. All my friends and I.
Después de eso, vino hace
After that, the Zaragoza group arrived. Started bulldozing houses because they can.
entonces yo
So I, as a property owner of Lomas del Poleo, I no longer have a home. I ask those of you who listen to this videotape that you do something for Lomas del Poleo because it's something that we cannot put up with anymore. As I mentioned before, we used to be one happy family because no one would bother us. Now, it's all very unsettling. We not live happily. Many of us, we don't speak because we're afraid. So those of you who are listening to this video and who are listening, I ask you, please help us.
por favor, nos ayuden.
Todos los días, ellos pasaban con
Every day they would pass by with 40 or 50 cholos, armed men, full of the materials that they took from the houses they tore down. The compañeros returned from work to look for their houses. The houses were no longer there. They'd been destroyed. It's been very sad and sad for us. They threaten us and they keep on watching over our houses, watching over us. They poison our animals, our dogs. They've done everything with us. My name is Petra Torres Enriquez.
Muy ofensivo,
I'm very offended by these people
porque en primer lugar
because they knocked down my son's house.
su casa amigo
My son's name was Francisco Mejia. We went shopping. When we came back, we found that his house was destroyed. He became very sick. He had great pains. I took him the next day, as soon as possible, to the doctors, and I didn't bring him home. And he died from the anger that he had. He died from internal bleeding. They tore down my fence. They took everything that I had, the wiring, building materials, everything. All those people who are workers for Mr. Zaragoza, they've done a lot of damage to us, a lot of wrongs. My son lost his life from the anger that he felt. I never brought him home again. I never brought him home alive, only to bury him. I'm all alone in Poleo. I never brought him home. And ever since then, I'm very sick.
They harass me, they even hit me. So now I live in fear because I watch the guards' trucks drive by, throwing lamps at the houses to see who's home and who isn't. And that's the terror that one feels. And my wife and I, we live there alone. It's the fear that we have that we might leave our home to run an errand, and then we come back and our home won't be there anymore. Sometimes we say, well, what does Lomas del Poleo have to do with the industrial zone? It's easy. Lomas del Poleo in the future is supposed to be an industrial development, where maquilas and industrial plants will exist to create different types of technology.
And so Lomas del Poleo is right in the middle of this San Jerónimo Santa Teresa proposed plan and the Sunland Park crossing. Lomas del Poleo is now finding itself in the strategically important place between the development that's planned for the eastern side of Juarez and in the San Jerónimo Santa Teresa area, and the business people are basically trying to clean off the land in order to develop their commercial interests in that area.
Every Mexicano has a right to a parcel of land. That's what the law says. The law says that any Mexicano who has possession of land for 5 years is his.
Yo le vuelvo a repetir con todo respeto que nosotros somos una delegación estadounidense que venimos de observación y documentación, que somos una delegación de observación observadores
Sí, yo comprendo.
y hemos sido invitados por los residentes de aquí para hablar con ellos en sus casas. Entonces les pedimos por favor la entrada. Nosotros entendemos de que es no se ha decidido legalmente si es privada o no.
Bueno, eso ni usted ni yo lo vamos a decir porque usted no es mexicano.
Y un comisionado
eso lo dicen las
del
leyes mexicanas.
Y un comisionado del Estado nos ha dicho que esta calle es una calle pública.
No, esta sí es pública. Esta sí es pública.
Ok. Estamos aquí observando y documentando. Gracias. Sí, Gustavo. Sí. Ok. Ok, hablar con el presidente municipal mañana de esto. Sí, eso es lo que está pasando. Sí, eso es lo que estamos haciendo. Ok. Etcétera. Esta calle siempre ha sido pública. Esta carta es prueba de que nosotros deberíamos de tener acceso. Entonces, como les dijimos aquí a los guardias, no sé si lo quiere ver.
No.
Ok. Pues nosotros no queremos causar ningún problema. Somos observadores internacionales, observadores neutrales. Simplemente estamos aquí para documentar, para observar. Y pues por eso quisiéramos entrar a visitar a estos residentes quienes nos han invitado a sus casas.
Señorita René.
Buen trabajo, ¿eh? I think that went fine. We knew that we probably weren't going to get it.
Threatened me numerous times. I worked in the school for 1 year, and he actually fired shots at me.
Una sola vez, pero me tiraron 5
They fired at me 5 times. And I was
Bueno, cuando le mandamos a hablar a la policía, que fue a las 4 de la mañana, le hablé yo del celular y nunca llegó. Entonces llegó el maestro.
The incident happened at 4 o'clock in the morning, and the cops were called. The cops came, and they basically said they were just fooling around.
And a worker who pays taxes in this municipality doesn't have a police force that will protect him. What happened in Lomas del Poleo, that even a human rights official was part of the state human rights commission was trampled.
A Catholic priest built a little chapel, a small chapel, and they knocked it down again.
20 o 30 metros antes del portón.
20, 30 meters before the
Como
main
ustedes pueden ver, esta es una calle.
You can see that's obviously a street.
Es una calle con caminada, una calle con algo que las calles aquí se hacen de
You can tell it's, a road, it's an official road.
Okay.
Shows where you arrive and have our intention of going in.
Ahí entro yo a la calle
I've entered the premises.
y entonces
At that moment, they stopped me. He asked the police to arrest this man for stopping him. He's impeding my entrance into a public road. Detain both of them. Arrest both of them.
ahí trato yo de salir y me impiden salir.
He tries to leave and they stop him.
Y entonces, ahí hay violencia y me pegan en la cabeza y me pegan en los brazos. Y
They hit
luego
him on the head and hit him on the arms. They locked the gate with a lock.
This is public property with a
Yeah.
public street.
And they barred the way.
encerrado yo.
He's asking to leave.
You have to allow me to leave. The guard sticks out a camera and is filming the whole incident. This is a crime. It's a serious crime. Information not allowing him to leave. It was private property. You're not allowed to leave. You can see the police are doing it.
He's making a declaration that the police did not assist him in entering this property. He's asking.
Nor will they identify themselves.
Well, I know, but before that, I think that's what he declared. And now he's asking the individuals who kept him from moving freely. He's asking them for their names. So they, again, kept me in without allowing me to leave.
Eso no me interesa.
And they kept saying, I don't care, I don't care. I'm the authorities.
No me interesa, no me interesa.
So the police did not support him in any way.
Es que le digo a la gente, pedimos por oficio que nos apoyaran y entonces a la gente dice, yo no tengo ningún oficio. Está comiendo. Que hubo violencia contra esas personas. E inclusive la violencia yo tengo pequeños actores. Realmente nadie me agredió intencionalmente.
I said the Zaragozas are Catholics and they would never dare, nobody would dare touch the chapel. Of course, the next morning, the whole chapel had been smashed in. They did it very, these are not stupid people. Like they're like a military operation. The guys went out at night, 2 pickup trucks full of guys, and we had 8 eyewitnesses. 3 of them were couples. They saw them leave the Zaragoza compound. They pulled up to the church compound after dark, pulled into the compound, put the lights of the truck out, put a chain into the Viga Madre, the main beam of the church, pulled that down, the whole church ceiling came in, and then they just hit it with stones and stuff like that. A minute and a half, and they were gone. And people saw them leave, they saw them go back into the compound. So the next day, they had nothing to do with it, they didn't know anything about it. We called all the media, the papers, the TV, the radio, and a lot of people came up and saw what was going on. We let everything sit there until Saturday. They did it on Wednesday night. Saturday morning, we had about 120 people come, and we rebuilt the church. We made it much bigger. And we also discovered a new form of construction that when you assemble the pallet walls, you take chopped up straw, clay, sand, and water, and you stuff the pallets. And then you muck up the outside with a different kind of a plaster mix, so you end up with about an 8-inch wall, an adobe wall. Fantastic insulation, fireproof. So because of what they did, A, we discovered this new kind of construction. B, all of the media drew attention to it, and they reported exactly what we said to them. We said it was a sacrilege committed by paid guards of the Zaragoza family. That went into the paper. And while we were rebuilding the chapel that Saturday, the head of the guards, who some of you may have seen his picture, he comes over and he says, you're not allowed to do this. You know, this is Zaragoza's land. I said, I know you're in the middle of kind of a land dispute here, but I said, this is not just a house. I said, this is like, and this is not just land, this is holy ground, and this is the temple of God, and I really wouldn't touch it. I would not bother this. So he said, well, tengo que irme a platicar con mi patrón, and then he comes back about 2 hours later, and he says, you can bring any material through the fence that you want to fix the church, and nobody will bother you, nobody will say anything about it, which is proof that they're the ones that did it. They have the authority to let us bring this stuff in. And then about a week later, the bishop came up. We had a mass up there, and things were looking really good for about a month or 2. And then they started the violence and the harassment, and within 6 months of rebuilding the chapel, they killed Luis Guerrero. The children were burned to death. So their strategy is they go a couple of steps forward, and then if you oppose them, they retreat. They go a couple of steps forward. If they meet opposition, they retreat. But they're relentless. So they've been going at it since May of 2003, and they're still going at it. And I'm sure that they think the day will come when they're just going to have that whole area cleaned out. And they will never have treated one person with justice. Nobody's rights would have been respected. And they think they're going to get their way. Unless people like us, in solidarity with people like them, are willing to say, no, that's not going to work. Like, we are really, really going to draw attention to this, and in any way that we can, we will make your life as miserable as possible. You know, here in the U.S., a lot of people were screaming and hollering about immigration. You know, why are all these 12 million Mexicans are here without document? Why is there all this immigration and stuff like that? I said, well, one, it's a big, complicated thing, but I said one of the reasons people come here is because they're treated like terror in their own country. So if you're somebody in Lomas del Poleo and you're obeying the law, you're abiding by the law, you're seeking your piece of land, your place in the sun, and people are being killed and their houses knocked down and children burned to death, and the government's like the police, the court system. So where are people going to go? You know, when you don't deal with issues in Mexico, you just add an incentive to people in another country to come here. And the other thing about NAFTA is, you know, I get bits and pieces of things. Like about a year and a half ago, 1.24 million Mexican workers were displaced because of the not being able to have a tariff on corn going into Mexico from the U.S. So we have our farmers heavily subsidized, selling corn, marketing down in Mexico, and you have 1.24 million agricultural workers. Where are they going to go? They're going to come up here looking for work. And even worse than that, imagine how much agricultural creativity, wisdom, genius, thousands of strains of corn, genetically developed strains of corn over centuries, over millennia, adapted to the altitude, adapted to the water, the rain, the nature of the soil, the likes of the people, thousands of strains of corn, and now it's going to be like all the crap from ConAgra or Monsanto or whoever else is going to be pushing their corn down there. So sworn testimony, and that's when I think the Zaragoza's lawyers saw my vulnerability, because in the frontier, in the frontera area, there's people going back and forth all the time, all kind of jobs, ministry, whatever you want to do, and almost nobody has any special kind of documents. There is something called an FM3 visa, which I think Ruben Garcia has one, or had one in the past, but the priests who were not Mexican, who were working on the other side of the border, nobody, not one person had this document. I've been working there for 8 years, never was mentioned to me. But when I went in to give the testimony, the lawyer, she said to me, "You have an immigration document." And I said, "You know, I got like a Texas license, I have a card, and I'm a priest working in Juarez in good standing with the bishop." She says, "No, immigration document." And nobody had ever asked me that in, well, 11 years. I started going across the West 11 years ago, 8 years functioning as a priest in good standing. I never heard the word document. So I said no. And one of the city lawyers who works for Morales, he was sitting there in the chair, he was taking down these notes. And that was like March 4th or something. And when I had to leave, they said the complaint was initiated on March 5th. So I'm sure that's where they found out my vulnerability and proceeded. It took a while, and eventually immigration called me in. They said, "Are you functioning as a priest?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Do you have an FM3 visa?" I said, "No." And they said, "See you later." And then the Zaragoza lawyer came into the room. There was a knock on the door. Guy comes in and sits down. I said, who is this? They said, "Oh, that's Licenciado Chacon Rojo." I said, "Oh." I said, "Mario Chacon Rojo. Él es el abogado de la familia de Zaragoza." And he's, "I'm representing Jose Hernandez Santa Cruz." Jose Hernandez Santa Cruz? "Oh, yes. Zaragozas have nothing to do with what's going on in Mesa. Jose Hernandez Santa Cruz rents the land, and he's cleaning it off for the Zaragozas." So I said, "So does this guy have a right to be in here?" When I'm giving my testimony, he says, "Yeah." I said, "Then I would like his name in the transcript. I wanted to say that Licenciado Mario Chacon Rojo estaba acá cuando el padre Guillermo Morton, blah, blah, blah." And he stood up immediately. "Caray, si no está cómodo el padrecito con yo aquí, voy a retirarme," and he left. So this is the way they work. You never interface directly with them. They always have some distance between them and anything that they do.
We are a North American. Thank you very much for coming this morning. We're a delegation for North America for human rights. We're comprised of organizations such as Amnesty International, National Lawyers Guild, La Raza Centro Legal, San Francisco, No More Deaths, Tucson, Arizona, the International Civil Commission for the Observation of Human Rights, the Labor Council for Latin American Advancement, the Alianza Latinoamericana, and the Davis Religious Community for Sanctuary. We have been in Ciudad Juarez realizing or taking part in an investigation in Lomas del Poleo from February 29th through March the 7th.
Beginning in spring 2003 and through the present, hired personnel contracted by Pedro and Jorge Zaragoza have directed constant actions of harassment against the residents of Lomas del Poleo, causing physical and mental health distress. The majority of these actions constitute human and civil rights violations under the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the Mexican Constitution. Collectively, these acts of harassment and intimidation have created dangerous conflicts and situations in their community. What are we going to do with this report? Where are you going to take it? Where are you going to disseminate it?
We're going to take these reports back to our cities where we are from. We're going to report to the media, radio, and television about our observations here in Mexico, and also to educate people in the United States and our communities about what is happening here.
What did the local government officials comment to you when you interviewed them?
Basically, the main message of what they said is that the situation is resolved. So basically, the local authorities said that the situation is resolved, and they say it's resolved because they received supposedly donated land from the Zaragoza family, even though in our report we leave this week uncertain that they actually own that land to give to the city. They donated that land to the municipality in order to create a relocation community for the residents of Lomas del Poleo. And some of the families have moved to that community. However, many families are still in Lomas del Poleo and suffering a lack of free access to their homes and school and consistent harassment from the guards.
One observation that I think I forgot to mention is that the Zaragoza guards prohibited the entry of this delegation into the community of Lomas del Poleo.
I received the document you are giving us, and we will read it and have the response it needs. We also received this document. This document was signed by the president. I assume that Mr. De La Rosa gave it to you. Is that right? Okay. This is a copy of a document published in Proceso about Lomas del Poleo. This is a document about from Diario, a copy from Diario. This is a report on human rights abuses in Lomas del Poleo by the North American Human Rights Delegation.